This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for KX with Ken. And I'm a little excited about this, Ken, because, you know, I did buy both of your books.
Hey, thank
Yeah,
you.
and they're
I
in.
mean, so you're responsible for both of them.
Yeah. And I bought them in Kindle, so it'd be so easy for me just to,
Yeah,
read it. And I still haven't opened it up yet. So,
really.
yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I had to finish Amy's book, Marrying George Clooney.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to put that one
The
down.
2 a.m. ranting of a menopausal maniac.
So, and I bought all three of them at the same time. And so
Okay.
I just finished hers. And now that you're going to read some snippets from yours, I'm sure I'm going to have to delve into that
Yeah. I
later.
would start with Insanity Begins at Home because that gives the family base, and then I take my first road trips in that book. The other ones are more later, and thoughts not just about hitching.
Well, I will.
Stories from the office, from the family therapy practice,
Okay.
etc.
Well, I will tell you, insanity runs in this family as well. So I'm looking forward to reading yours. So, what are we going to start with today?
All right. So, for those of you who don't know me or don't know the story, um, I'll just read the book jacket because the book jacket is a summary of what I'm going to say. So, let's just start off. And a young man from Greenwich Village sets off in 1965 to see the road. The yearning he has to hitchhike across America and journal every ride. He eventually will journal his travels in Europe and North Africa. Initially, he is driven by all the folk music ballads and literature which tell the young man, from the poets, the musicians, the writers, who take off on their own journeys to see wherever the road leads. He has to see it for himself, this land of America. It is a time of turmoil in the United States, and the experiences he has and the people he meets are part of the fabric of the times. In 1969, he makes his second journey to see this and record all the states he had not seen on the first adventure. Now more mature, having spent 2 years in Europe as well, he travels are intermeshed with the cultural revolution taking place in the United States, following the tumultuous political year and the assassinations in 1968. For those of you who don't know, that was Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King.
Yes, absolutely.
2 years later, he hitchhikes through southern Europe along the Mediterranean, covering Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Monte Carlo, and Morocco. We see him among his adventures with the jet setters and the expatriates while doing improv theater in cafes in Spain and Portugal. Those were some of the most fun times of my life. Living with these guys who ran bars in New York. They were now living in Portugal and Spain, and the bar was sending them their checks, to which they were living in villas with maids and this, and all the jet setters of Europe were coming down to the Portuguese Algarve and the Spanish Gold Coast. And it was just like playtime.
Wow.
And these guys taught, and these were guys in their late 30s, and they just taught me entrepreneurship about how to make it and then how to live. Once you make the money, you got to live. And so
Right.
these guys work 6 months a year. So anyway, that's where I was traveling along with these maniacs. We are there in his early family years growing up in New Jersey and witnessed the survival battles with his mother. We meet the mixed marriage parents and the insanity of the early years. His desire to see it all is visible when we follow him on his first job at age 14 in New York City, where he is introduced to the world of published writers and newspapermen. I worked for the newspaper. He sees Greenwich Village for the first time and listens to the poets, the jazz, and sees the artist cafe life. Major influence in me for my whole life. I was 14 and I saw this stuff.
Wow.
Later, we see as stories as he goes from apartment to apartment as a street social worker in New York's Lower East Side and learns about poverty, prejudice, administration, power, justice, money, social causes, etc. We follow him living in Greenwich Village, working as a bartender while studying acting, and he films his own cable TV show. We watch him grow up as he experiences the world most people can only dream of. He develops a very fun-loving, pointy, witty, and caring and insightful view of people and life. We go across America with him twice as he takes us to Europe and South America. From dancing with the Indians in Taos to riding with the gauchos in Argentina. He takes us to Carnival in Rio and the Casbah in Marrakesh. He sleeps everywhere, including the Mojave Desert, the barns of Texas, Indiana, and Utah. He's in big rigs, including the back of a flower in the barns of Texas, Indiana, and Utah. He's in big rigs and in the back of a flower shop in Mexico. He's in a camper in Yellowstone and a cave room in Oklahoma. He's in the back of an Alabama State Police car, and he travels with long haulers and farmers and shoots pool for food and money with the ranchers and bar people in every state. He goes from inner city black blues, he rides with cowboys and ropes horses in Montana. He debates racism and prejudice wherever he meets it. We laugh with him in a gay bar in Germany and witness four in a tub in Denver. We roar at the upside down world and we sometimes finds. We watch him climb out of bathroom windows as he escapes danger. He meets women everywhere and takes us on some touching encounters and sometimes spicy journeys. As he shares his thoughts and emotions and he travels state to state, country to country. He falls in love in Spain and we feel with him during his special time of joy and tears.
You know, as you read that, it sounds like a Hollywood movie because nobody can experience all that, but you
But
did.
that's only a part of it. He loves the good, kind hearted, and generous people of America, Europe, and North Africa who put him up in his homes and fed him. It's a wonderful adventure, full of delightful stories as he discovers their kindness and caring. He shares his honest, heartfelt reflections of himself and the world he found. It takes him 40 years to write the book from the journals he so carefully cataloged. He writes now from the perspective of a man who has lived an extraordinary life, where he has been a city messenger, a truck driver, a door to door Bible salesman, an actor, a model, a photographer, a Greenwich Village waiter and bartender, an Army veteran, musician, teacher, street social worker, family therapist, world traveler, father, and now author. It's a story of a man's search for himself and the road unknown, and you will love the ride. It's a bit
Um,
overwhelming, isn't it?
yeah,
I lose my breath when I hear about that. I did all that shit.
but the interesting part is that many of us don't realize how much we have done in our life. Oh, as you disappeared and your video
My
went
camera filmed out.
away. Well, we'll get Ken back here in a second. Drink of water, just turned off the video.
I know. I'm trying to get it back.
Okay. Well, we can wait for you. No problem. There we go. All right.
Now I got to get something that holds this. I had it all set up, and it fell.
Modern technology. What can we say? There we
How
go.
we doing?
That's good. So, as I started to say, we don't think that most of us could experience as much as you have. But the reality of it is, um, I've sat back occasionally and started making a list of how I got to where I am today. And I sometimes wonder, really? I did all that? When did I have time? But as I'm listening to you, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who are going to hear the same thing, that when you were age 14, you basically became a mini adult.
Right.
And 14-year-olds today um, are not as,
Playing video games.
yeah, they are playing video games, but they don't seem to have that,
Wanderlust.
yeah. And I mean, I even remember when I was 14, um, there goes your camera again.
I'm
Um,
telling you, it's not a easy.
there we go. But I remember when I was 14, um, I had to be responsible for a lot of different things. My mother worked out of the house, being the only girl. Uh, Part of my job was to come home after school every day and make sure everything was straightened up. Um, but at 14, you basically walked out of your house, went into what a lot of people would have considered a very dangerous city at the time, and you found your way. So, what did your parents think of all this?
Well, my father worked at the place. It was called King Features Syndicate. It was in the Daily Mirror building on East 45th Street, a block up from the UN.
Okay.
And he worked as a stock clerk. But King Features Syndicate did the editorial offices for the Journal American and the New York Daily Mirror. They were all the funny papers. It was Walt Disney and Al Capp, and then it was all the writers: Dorothy Kilgallen, Westbrook Pegler, Walter Winchell. I got to meet Gene Autry. I got to meet Arthur Godfrey. I got to meet all these
Wow.
people. So he went in earlier than me, but he told me how to do it. You take the bus to Port Authority, then you take the crosstown 42nd Street bus, and then you get off, you walk 3 blocks up, or you can walk it if you come in early. Or if it's raining, you go downstairs, you take the subway, you get off at Grand Central, and you cut your way through 3 or 4 blocks, and you're there. And then the job itself was a messenger job. I sorted mail in the morning and delivered it to all the bigwigs. That's how I got to get these errands. Oh, take this down to the village. Take this over to the Empire State. Take this up to the Hearst Building. And so that's how I got to meet all these celebrities, is that I was bringing them their mail or bringing them their messages. And I would wait in their office for the answer and then there was no cell phones back then.
Right. Exactly.
I was the fast mail. And so to get there, you had to learn the subway and you had to learn the bus system, which I did. And finally, they sent me down to Greenwich Village. So I had to go down to Christopher Street to a writer who was, I had to bring him some copy. He was editing the copy and I had to bring it back. He said, give me 2 hours. So I had 2 hours to kill. I found the Figaro on McDougal Street, and Bleecker Street, and the Fiend John, and then all the cafes of the beatnik cafe life of the 50s in Greenwich Village. It was like, oh my God, there's adult men sitting around here not wearing shirts and ties. What do they do all day? Found out they were writers, they were poets, they were restaurant owners, they were bar owners, managers, they were regular people that lived in the artist community of Greenwich Village. I fell totally in love with the place. I mean, I lived in Weehawken, everybody lived in a 2-family or 3-family house, and there wasn't anything else. It was the
Right.
deli and then there was the butcher store and, there wasn't any life, Here was life, people with creative thoughts. So I'm 15 now and I'm going to the cafes at night, listening to the bebop guys, listening to, Lenny Bruce. I mean, it's like, whoa, I'm writing papers for English class about these experiences, and the teachers are going,
I can imagine. I can
does
imagine.
your mother know you got
So, speaking
you're
of
in
that,
these clubs?
so what did your mother think?
Well, actually, she never knew too much about it because, I'm not going to give up what I got going on. And it really then changed because the next year my father died. And after my father died, my mother was no good to anybody. She was in bed for 2 years, and I was free. I was just out. I could now leave at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. She was already in bed for the night. I went down, got on the bus, and I'm in New York. I'm down the village. I'm 17 years old now, and I'm going to the jazz clubs. I'm going in the clubs because as a big kid, and nobody checks at a jazz club for your proof or anything. They just let you in. So, I had this whole world, and I wasn't going to blow it and say what I was
Right.
doing.
Exactly.
The trouble was I couldn't get anybody to go with me. They weren't allowed to go to New York on their own.
Well, in this, I was going to say, many of us who grew up during that time, um, I grew up in suburbia, okay, and uh, to even go to a downtown section of the city where there was nightlife. Um, Number one, if my parents ever, would have found me sneaking out of the house to go, uh, I probably wouldn't be here to tell the story. Um,
Yeah.
and that's how most of us lived. But the way you're explaining it now makes a lot of sense. In the beginning, your father introduced you to it. Um, and that was a great introduction that
Yeah,
he gave you.
yeah. It
Great.
took away all the fear.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm 17, jazz saved me. I started listening to Symphony Sid. He was the MC at Birdland, which was Charlie Parker's bar in New York. And some Miles Davis is playing there, Ornette Coleman, I'm seeing Dave Brubeck, Peggy Lee. I'm going to the Basin Street East. I'm going to uptown, downtown, Harlem, Small's Paradise. I was just not afraid. I had adventure. I didn't have fear, and so it took over. And so, hey, kid, you know where you're going? Yeah, I'm going to listen to the music. Good for you. Let you in.
So when you went to some of these jazz clubs back in the day, many of them, they were white only or black only, correct?
Yeah, depends on the place.
So did you have
You,
trouble getting into a black only place?
no, no, because there was always one guy at the door, and he would say, "Where you going? Going to listen to music. What kind of music you gonna listen to? Jazz, man. Jazz.
Got it.
Go ahead, kid. Just like that. It was as simple as that. Well, the blues, man. I got the blues in me. There's no blues in the white neighborhood. I gotta come here. And so they laugh. People are people. If you act like you know what you're doing, which I didn't a lot of the times, but I acted like I did, because I could get in. I wanted to go in. I wanted to hear the music. I say, I listen to Symphony Sid. Yeah, I get excited.
Yes, makes for an interesting view.
No, but I listen. Oh, there it is. One again. I'll get it.
All right, we know you well.
Can't get it now. Come on. Trying.
Technology is not always your friend, Ken. I know that.
I don't know what button I hit before, but I hit the right one before.
Well, we can keep talking as you're trying to hit buttons. So you had no trouble getting in because, as you said, um, you just sort of took charge. You knew what it was you wanted to do, and you didn't let fear get in the way.
Let me start over, Karen. I'm going to cut
Yeah.
out for a second.
Okay. Okay, we are back. Technical difficulties have been fixed.
The world of technology
Yeah.
strikes again.
So
All right,
the
go
big
ahead.
question I was asking you or stating to you is your ability to sort of take charge um, and not show any fear because you were adventurous. That helped you every time you went and did something sort of out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
and the lucky part was, I was a little OCD, and I journaled everything in my life since eighth grade. I had a
Wow.
calendar, wrote out where I went and what I did. And then after that, I bought notebook after notebook, and I would journal every night. And maybe I'd wait a day or 2 days, but I wrote where I was and what I did. I wouldn't have remembered 1 billionth of what I did if I just relied on my memory, which is a pretty good memory. I mean, I got a good one, but it's been aided by rereading over the years. I've stayed connected to the path of my own life. I
Sure.
know where I was and what I did. And so those stories stay with you once you journal everything. And once I realized the magic of journaling those rides, I would read it like someone else. Oh, look, I don't remember this, but there it was, and every detail about it, which was the magnificent part of it. It makes the story come to, as a writer, you have to have details.
Right.
And so it all came back to life. And now, as I just picking up this folder, which is this thick, I was saying, gee, I don't remember that. Oh, I'm glad I read this story. I got a couple of them here today that
Okay. Let's
I'll
hear
share.
one of them.
All right. This is called the Midwest. New Yorker, hitchhiking, seeing the Midwest for the first time. The ride to Indianapolis was in a furniture truck with a happy-go-lucky driver named Ned. He made his delivery the night before and was headed back to Indianapolis after spending the night in what he called a flea bag motel. Shoot, I thought to myself, I had done a lot better than that, as I had a pretty good night the night before. But I wasn't about to share that with Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. He told one joke after another and liked each one better than the one before. Kind of Midwest humor, I thought to myself. I remember listening in the summertime, growing up, to WBLS out of Chicago. That's when the wind was right. I was amazed I could get Chicago on my little diddly radio. But Gene Shepard told Middle America stories about simple folks and baseball on a summer night. Kind of old time, innocent America stuff. And this guy told those kinds of jokes. No foul language and very down to earth stories. Reminded me of the Prairie Home Companion with Garrison Keillor. I like that kind of hoedown, simple folk stuff.
Sure.
So I laughed, more chuckled than laughed as we rode through America's plains of Indiana. Lots of farms and cattle, great looking barns. Hilly roads would seem to be getting flatter the more we rode. When I saw Indianapolis, I said to myself, this is supposed to be a big city? Looked like downtown Wall Street, and they were calling this their entire city. I guess that's you get what you're used to. I was used to a huge city with multiple buildings, blocks of skyscrapers all next to one another. They had 4 or 5 moderately sized buildings, and that was it. The people of Indianapolis could not have been nicer. It was a big city to them, but they didn't have that big city, every man for himself attitude. They were friendly, polite, and traveled much at a much slower pace. It was my first revelation. That time was a lot different to the people of the Midwest as it was to a New Yorker. They took their time and no one rushed, ever. They waited for lights. They did not hit their horn. They even waited for people who had not yet entered the sidewalk. In New York, if you were not directly in front of the car, it was full speed ahead. And when the car swerved in order to not hit you, you immediately got yelled at or got the finger. Out here, they had manners, and it felt very strange, but I liked it. I asked Ned if everybody was like this. Like what? You know, easygoing, polite. You seem surprised, he said. It made me think, yeah, he's right. I'm accustomed to people not being kind and everyone being angry and in a rush. I always had been taught to say please and thank you, but this was different. These people were considerate. Hmm. I did not stay long in Indianapolis, as there was really not a lot of interest for me to do so. I had seen it and there were bigger fish to fry, so I got back on the road. I was headed to St. Louis, but it was a long ride and I would not make it today. It was the afternoon already, so I figured I would get to Terre Haute. Got a ride from a farm supply guy in a big old Buick. Willie, he said to call him. He was from Missouri, but now he was living in Terre Haute. Nice town, he told me. Good for families and farmers. Said they don't have industrial businesses there, but mainly it's simple folk. Nothing fancy, if you get my drift. After listening to Willie for about an hour, the simplicity of his life was astounding. All he wanted was his job, his wife, his kids, church on Sunday, a good baseball game with a few beers, and some homemade cooking. Everything he talked about could be summed up in those categories. And I was amazed how easy life sounded. He had his route, he had his contacts, sold his supplies, went home each week and did it again. Told me there wasn't much in Terre Haute to see, but boy, was that an understatement. But I was learning. Not everything was New York, and the further away I got from it, the easier life seemed to become. It was dinner time now when we arrived, and Willie thanked me for my company and dropped me off downtown. Found a diner and started talking to the waitresses. They told me the same thing, that not much happens around here, but there's a tavern with music down the road, and they have dancing tonight. So I ate a meal and ambled on down the road. The tavern was attached to a barn-like structure and was full of pickup trucks in the parking lot. Inside, there were men drinking and smoking. A few women on the edge of the place, but after an hour, I was very tired. I talked to the bartender and told him I was looking for a place to crash. He pointed out a man wearing a big checkered vest and said, "Ask him." I asked the bartender for his and the man's name. That was pure luck on my part. Because when I told Arnie that George had sent me to talk about crashing, his response was, "George sent you?" "Yes, sir." "Oh, okay. Well, you can sleep in the hayloft in the barn out back, but no smoking." "I don't smoke, sir." "Good." So I went and spent my first night ever in a hayloft. I loved the smell of the place. It was a combination of very earthy smells, some good, some not so good, but it was fine. Slept under what I think was a horse blanket. Hello, America. I'm here.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else in my life who would ever have done anything like that. And this, but that's a positive thing because the adventure that you had. I mean,
Day after day. Day after it was like this day after day.
and back in the day, there was no hesitancy of hitchhiking like there would be today.
Well, I ran into some trouble in the South, and Birmingham wasn't a fun place for me. But most of the places, the Midwest, upper Midwest, especially the more north you went, the easier it got. You know, it just was easy. Let me tell you about going to St. Louis.
Okay.
After a really unique night in the barn's hayloft, I was well rested and just cleaned up a bit using the tub that had a hose connected to it. I walked back to the diner and had a coffee and a roll. Back on the road for my next ride. Like most others in the Midwest, it came very easily. A big 16-wheeler with a cigar smoking, loud music listening giant of a man named Lawrence picked me up. "Where the hell are you going to St. Louis?" was his first question. "Well, it's on the way. I'm headed across country." "Well, that's different because St. Louis has gone to the niggers." That's how he said it. Oh boy, did I get into the wrong truck. I'd never used that word in my life. And I took on everyone who ever showed prejudice, no matter who they were and what they were prejudiced against. I always saw it as a sign of ignorance, and it was totally unacceptable. So the only thing that could go wrong here, I thought, was that he could tell me to get the hell out of his truck. So I rose to the occasion, got into it with him. Why do you say that? He went on and on about the shiftless people who took drugs and were violent and had illegitimate children, lazy, shiftless people who were nothing but moochers from the government. So I told him about my work in the Lower East Side with people and poverty and what it does to them. Well, it became a classroom debate. He said he wasn't as uppity educated as me and he couldn't use all them big words, but he knew how things were. Lawrence, to his credit, was not as dumb as he sounded. We went on for about 2.5 hours, each weighing in with our best arguments. He softened a bit as I was able to get him to redefine his prejudice to not include everyone under the same label. He did agree that there were some worthwhile Negroes. I attacked his premise and I said I thought hillbillies, who also were having children and were not married. I pointed out drug addiction and violence were not racially related. The common denominator was more about lack of education and resulting poverty. I then asked him to name any well-known Negro serial killers. He couldn't. I rattled off 5 white serial killers to make my white violence point. I threw in the Klan as white killers, sneaky, uneducated, and violent. He developed a respect for me for not yelling my opinion, although he clearly saw I disagreed with him. I said that's what we do in college. We discuss different points of view and try to understand each other's side before you dismiss it. There ain't no other side when it comes to them shifty sons of bitches. I said, sure there was. There were white folks who run the police, the courts, the judges, and the newspapers who kept reinforcing prejudice and beating people who should be helped. With that about sent him into overdrive. He saw me laugh and he got it. You just button pushing now, ain't you? Trying to get me riled up. I said, it doesn't take much, does it, Lawrence? We took a breath after that and we both felt we had done our best. I think I made some points with him, but prejudice is like religion. If you believe it, it's so. I think I made some points with him, but you will have to been taught the other guy just will never understand. A faith, belief, and ignorance are founded upon opinion, and facts have nothing to do with it. When we reached St. Louis, Lawrence thanked me for a good afternoon and told me with a twinkle in his eye where I could find all the Negroes. We shook hands and I said hello to St. Louis. Oh, there were guys like that all over. I mean,
Big cities, little cities all around the world. Yes.
oh my God.
But the fact that as a young man, you would take him on knowing that he could have just left you stranded on the side of the road.
Right. That was the risk. But I think the juice got to him. He liked the fight, you know. So as it turned out, I had written about St. Louis blues, where I had gone to East St. Louis with 4 black guys and spent the night with them. And
Right.
Jerome was the man who showed up about 11 a.m. and took me back to the highway. I was really grateful because I'm on my way to Kansas City. Really grateful for these brothers who were very kind and very funny. We were living in very racially charged times, and there had been a march on Washington, and the black radical element of the civil rights movement wanted nothing to do with Whitey. But these fellows and I had no prejudice, and after I told them that I was at Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, they, like me, were just people. Jerome's parting word to me had to do with pool. You shoot a good game. Yeah, but Sweet William got you, didn't he? Point taken. See you, Jerome. Going to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. It was playing in my head. When I got the next ride, a 3/4 ton panel truck with Martha G. behind the wheel. Martha was in her early 50s and was wearing overalls and a baseball cap. She was delivering copper pipe and fittings to a local hardware stores in Kansas City. She had not many people hitching these days, lots of crazy folk out there. I agreed, but then I went on to tell her about all the really kind, wonderful people who had picked me up. She shot back at me. I ain't talking about the nut jobs on the road, not the good people who picked him up. Dope. I said, why did you pick me up? Well, you have college kid written all over you, she said with a warm, sweet face. You get everywhere. She read me like an open book. Where you from, New York? Right again. How'd you know that? That accent is a dead giveaway. This was the first time I really thought about having an accent. It's only when you travel does that kind of a thought come into your head. I liked Martha. She was straightforward, no bull. She said it, she said it. She thought it, she said it. It was not like a feminine woman that you could feel that she was still sexual by her jokes and innuendos. I thought she was gay. So I opened up about shooting pool with the lesbians in the village. Not my normal nomenclature was dykes, but that was the way they referred to themselves. Dykes were either femmes or bulls. She cut right through. So you think I'm a dyke? Good for you, Sharp Eye, I am. From then on, we had a ball. We talked about men and women, including the straight assholes she deals with all the time, who are so straight that they think homos are communists. She said she had a partner now, but she had been married very early in her life and has a son about my age. Not easy being queer out here, she said. Well, as soon as she said it, we both started laughing. And I started singing about it's hard being queer out here. It got funnier and funnier as we made up the verses. I barely noticed the landscape in Missouri, as most of the Midwest states were now very pastoral. We stopped at a roadside cafe, and once again, my ride would not let me pay. She told me I was the most refreshing person she had met in a long time, and I said, that's because, chimed in, it's hard being queer out here. Martha and I exchanged addresses, and for a few years, we sent holiday cards. She dropped me off in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's the real Kansas City, not the other one across the river in Kansas. She gave me the name of the Jungle Club, and they said she shot a good game of pool there. I thanked her for the ride, lunch, and a fantastic, fun-filled afternoon. She gave me a hearty hug and said, you're very sweet. God, I feel lucky and happy. Bye, Martha. That's the kind of people you meet people. That's it. The whole fabric of the country is who the hell picks you up.
Right.
And the type of conversation that you have with them, if you let them tell you about themselves and what their views and what their battles are, etc. So this one's going to get a little racy.
Okay.
Kansas City and Nellie. It was late afternoon when Martha dropped me off, and I wandered around Kansas City and did not form a clear opinion of the place. It was like a collection of many other cities put together. One thing is that it was flat. It had an okay downtown, smaller than St. Louis, but it was very clean. I had the Wilbur Harrison song in my head about Kansas City, and I wanted to see what 12th Street and Vaughan was all about. I couldn't believe they wrote a song about this intersection. But then again, when I heard the song again, realized with the lyrics where I was understanding better, this is a tawdry part of town, and the ladies here are for sale. So, moving on, along to the next thing about Kansas City. It's known for making great steak. Well, with all the cattle I've seen in the last 2 days, they should be able to pick one out and make a good steak. But steak costs a lot of money, and I'm on a bare bones budget. But I thought I have spent a lot less than I thought I would because of the generosity of a lot of people on the road. So I head to my best on the road earning machine, a tavern with a pool table. I found Sonny's Grill. Well, the grill part was just the sign, but they had 3 tables. Always a good sign. A lot of ranchers looking, talking loud, playing pool. These guys were talkers and not shooters. I had played much better competition in St. Louis. These guys I beat here could beat those guys. In order to not get them pissed off at me, I told them up front that I was pretty good and they'd probably lose. Oh, I said that purposely so they would not feel hustled. Being ranchers and drinking alcohol only raised their competitive spirit. I kept I kept wanting to stop, but now they were taking their turns trying to beat me. It worked perfectly. When I had the stake money, I said, no more, I'm gone. So I went to Morel's Steakhouse and had me a sirloin with mushrooms and onions. I think I can still remember the taste. It was that good. And yes, a great big baked potato and a side salad. Hadn't eaten that much since I left New York. So I paid for the meal with the rancher's singles, and now I had 2 left over. Walked about a bit and headed to the Jungle Club. Now, the Jungle Club was one wild and crazy joint, even for Kansas City. The entrance was something that you expected King Kong to walk through. Huge fake trees with vines everywhere. A fake waterfall and a fake pool guided you into a huge dance hall with 3 bars and an entire section of pool and darts in the back. This place was huge. At 9 p.m., the band that would start to play, but now it was only the jukebox. I could feel that this was going to be a good night. I couldn't exactly know why, but it was one of those premonitions based on a feel. It had all the elements: dancing, live music, huge pool area, couches. Couches. What a neat idea. The girls started arriving in 2s and 3s, and they were simply dressed and attractive, mostly in jeans with checkered shirts. Some had a bandana around their neck, a few wore small cowboy hats. I decided to go to one of the couches and watch the level of pool. Martha was right. They shot well. Must have watched about half an hour when the live music began, and the most direct woman I'd ever run into sat down next to me on the couch. You're not from around here, are you? Does it show that much? Sure does. Her name was Nellie. After about 5 minutes of non sequitur, she said, well, if you're not going to ask me to dance, then I'm going to have to give it to one of these other local boys. Did I just hear that correctly? If giving it out here meant what it meant in the village, then she was making a direct proposition. Either dance with me or I'm going to leave with someone else, is what I thought she was saying. So I stammered a bit and said, well, we can dance, but I came here to shoot some pool. I love a man who knows how to use his stick. Okay, message is now clear. Either she's insane or hormone hot crazy or both. So we dance and she starts in with the little moans. I'm thinking, this is way too early for this late night stuff. I have to get away from this firecracker. So we finish the dance and I say, I have to take a leak. I go to the bathroom and try to think this one out. If I have her all over me, I will not shoot well. If I tell her to take a hike, I may miss out on whatever the hell she has in store for me. So I come up with a game plan, which is to dance with someone else, and that will keep her off her tracks. So I can see later on if she's still around. So I walk near the bar, ask somebody else to dance. About 3/4 through the dance, she walks on the dance floor, walks up and says something directly into the ear of the woman I'm dancing with, which I do not hear, and she walks away. Dance is over, and that woman whooshes off and took off as brief, as fast as she could be. I'm thinking, what the hell did she say to that woman? And I thought I probably don't want to know because she is loose beyond loose and maybe dangerous. So I go to the pool area and I sign up to play. I don't see her anymore and figure, yeah, she stalked out somebody else. I'm on a roll, having played earlier, and I am relaxed against this better competition. Haven't seen a Sweet William here, but they are good. By the third table, she is now visible and waving her fingers demurely at me. I have $5 when I sit down voluntarily, which means I have to re-sign in order to play, as I have relinquished my right on the table. Nellie comes over and sits down. She is completely different. Now she's calm, a little distant than she was before. You are a very good pool player, she says matter-of-factly. Why, thank you, Nellie, and it's nice of you to say so. What else can you do well? Here we go again. So I say, well, I can ride a fast motorcycle and I can make a good cocktail. To which she says, oh, is that so? Well, how good a kisser are you? I'm actually getting a little embarrassed now by the direct forward shots this woman is taking. I like a woman who is not afraid to lead, but it usually comes after we've had a little talk or some seduction that's going on, whatever. I say to her, Nellie, you are very beautiful and a very sexy woman. I'd be very happy to spend some time with you. But quite honestly, you're scaring me. Well, just where are you from? There's this little hick from Kansas City. Where are you from? New York. Well, you sure don't act like a big city guy, except for your pool playing. Any one of these local boys would have had me outside by now. What are you, kind of timid or something? Nellie, let's make a deal. You sit with me and I'll play another round of pool and we can talk. I cannot believe I just said that. I'm sounding like every girl I ever met. Let's talk. Oh my God. Go slower. I'm saying. Here I am putting the brakes on this really attractive woman because I want to play pool. Whether I try to regain my bearing and see if I really want to be this either very attractive or focused on what she wants woman, or this nutty psycho heat wave that could wind up very much out of control. I don't know what I got here. Deal, that's all she said. She morphed into a normal person. Clapped, cheered for me, gave out information about herself. I guess she read I was going to be with her, but she had to go through my own hoops first. I shot very well on the second round, made about $8 before I retired. Nellie asked me to ask her to dance. I felt good about that because she picked up on how I rolled. Would you like to dance, Miss Nellie? Why, thank you, Mr. New York Slow. She's calling me slow. I don't think anyone who ever knew me would call me slow or unadventurous. But here I was, this farm girl from Missouri, and Kansas City is basically making fun of me for being old school. It was really a mind turner. She played it down only because it was going her way, and we left the place, and she said we could go to another place, slow dance, and have a nightcap. So outside, she has this covered pickup truck, and we go to a small place where we danced slow and had a nightcap. When we left the place, we had never said a word about where we would go. She just started to drive. Now, where are we going? You'll see. I figured at that point, just go along and enjoy it. She said, we did the first part your way. Now we'll do this part my way. Fair is fair, she said. We went to a farm outside Kansas City. There was a big farmhouse after a long drive, and we went past it. Folks lived there. After a long road to a smaller house, she pulled up in front. Home, she quipped. It was a combination of hippie blue light day glow madness and farm style beauty. She put me on a hide covered couch and put on some bluesy rock sounding stuff on the stereo. Be right back. She returned about 5 minutes later in a series of long veils and started to dance and twirl. She was graceful and sensuous. She whirled about into the next room and came back with two small glasses which tasted like drambuie. Wow, you guessed it. I'm a New York bartender, right? She whirled and stripped and teased and played and came around with her next return. She had a joint, which we smoked. Then she offered her hand, and I followed her into a room that was decorated like a cave. The ceilings were lowered with hanging light cotton, multicolored blankets, and the lamps were muted purple and orange. By this time, she could do whatever she wanted. I really liked her style. She was not inhibited in any other way, and she was even fun. So I asked why the psycho come on at the bar. No sense playing games. Women can do what men do, period. She was absolutely correct. And the next 10 years would bear that out as women shed servitude and freed themselves in the wild, crazy 60s. She was an absolute delight. We romped around her cave till early morning. Was this trip to be believed? I am sure glad I am writing this down. Holy cow, she got me up at sunrise and it was magnificent. We fell back asleep. She made fruit and yogurt for breakfast, and I said I was going to take a detour and head north to Des Moines. And she said she had farm chores at noon. Nellie put me on the road to Des Moines. She said, glad you finally let yourself go. You should enjoy life more. Enjoy life more anymore, and I'll make it into the Hedonistic Hall of Fame.
Wow. Wonderful stories. Love it. And these are the stories that I know our listeners will enjoy as well. And I'm hoping that as people listen to us on a regular basis, they'll start to contact you, Ken, and share their stories because
That's what I'm trying to make a community here. I tell my stories, you tell your stories. See
absolutely,
where we meet, because I
absolutely,
think people that have been through the Midwest and understand what the Midwest is all should be able to understand what I'm talking about. I mean, when you see it from an urban New York Eastern point of view, it's heartwarming, and that's what like so much of travel is. It's an experience, a learning experience. The people you meet, some of them a little bit nutty, some of them prejudiced, some of them kind, caring. You meet them all. And it's my stories and your stories.
I love it. Well, we'll do this again in 2 weeks. And again, if you want to contact Ken, you can contact him through his website, which is kxkyaks.guru, GURU. Or you can contact him here at New Cleveland Radio. And
And while they're on the site, they should check out the blogs.
absolutely.
Got a lot of blogs that have some of these stories on them.
So,
And let me know what you think. I'm open
absolutely.
to any opinion.
Well, have a great day. Happy New Year and
Thank
stay
you, Karen.
well. And
Be
we'll
well,
see
girl.
you soon.
Take
Bye bye now.